Look, I'm not going to tell you there's no such thing as a reasonable cause to have a petition, created for one purpose or another. But I'm going to tell you for a large part, I think mostly what petitions do is make very loud, not particularly well-supported individuals, give them the opportunity to change things that really probably mostly shouldn't be changed. That's why today I'm talking about the subject of change.org on today's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and I'm glad to have you along today, whether it's on YouTube, on Rumble, on the podcast. Rumble being, again, the platform I prefer. Hope you're doing well today. Today is Tuesday, the 15th of June of 2021. In case I didn't already say it, I am your host. In case I didn't say that, my name is Kurt. I'm glad to have you aboard, as I say. All right, so we're talking about this subject of change.org. I saw a thing recently that got put out there on a social media platform, and you might notice I never name social media platforms, or very rarely do, because for the most part, I don't want to be liable to the potential slings and arrows of doing so. But anyway, somebody put something out on a social media platform about a given group and about how they should be banned from doing certain things, which, by the way, they had no reason to suggest or ask for, right? So I'm sitting and I'm looking at this, and it makes me shake my head. And of course, it leads you to change.org, the horrible site, in my personal opinion, for supposedly people voicing their opinion, speaking their mind. I'm going to go ahead and read you my notes real quick, just so that you know where I'm coming from, as usual. Can I tell you a secret? Until people I don't consider know much of anything... Oh, this is the wrong notes. I'm pretty sure I've got the wrong notes here, so give me a second to get the right ones. This is what I'm going to talk about there is pretty good too, but it's not what I should be talking about today. Have you ever participated in a change.org poll or survey or whatever you want to call them? I never have, and likely never will. I cannot imagine needing such a mechanism. Getting people to think about things they might get behind is fine in my view. Leveraging that to stop perfectly legitimate activity, not so much. Forcing people who are uninterested in something to participate in it by amassing supposed support for it is equally bad. If you think 100,000 signatures on a petition is a big deal, compare that to a population of 3 million in my home state alone. And let's not forget, by the way, countrywide that's 330 million, right? And it only goes up in number. Remember that you have roughly 300. You'd have, excuse me, I see what I did there. You'd have to get roughly 3,300,000 people to get 1% of the population of the United States. Again, 330 million total people. If folks are doing more or less harmless stuff, creating a petition to get them to stop is frankly brain dead. It's brain dead. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution was not created to protect ideas with which you, or even the majority of you, agree. I cite the fact that somebody was trying to silence QAnon. And I'll get into this some more tomorrow. But here's the thing. I don't really know very much about QAnon, and I'll be frank with you, I don't see any reason to know very much about QAnon. They don't seem to be doing anything that's particularly problematic. You don't need to pay them any mind, and so I don't know why you do. So creating a change.org survey or petition or whatever you want to call it to stop QAnon from doing a particular thing, for example, really is the epitome in my mind of brain dead. It's ridiculous. It's bad enough when you try and use it for legitimate government business, like I want this to happen or I don't want that to happen. Why is it bad? Yet again, it's not really bad for the idea that people get the ability to voice their opinions, but when you talk about 100,000 people who have signed their name to something, and particularly when you can't even tell if they're people that that thing really affects. So Texas has a voting law, and 100,000 people say that they are against that voting law and that it needs to be dealt with on a federal level, which is not something that needs to happen. But that having been said, let's say they do. Let's say they do that for some reason. So now 50 or 60,000 of those people are not Texans. What is that? What are you trying to do there? What are you accomplishing there, people? Come on now. The problem is with an entity like change.org, if you're not talking about things that are national, and quite frankly, even if you are, because people who are not Americans can get on that site, so unless you're limiting it to American citizens being able to use that site, pretty much anybody can sign their John Hancock, as it were, on that petition. Now, in the old days, when people rolled around through the streets with petitions, it was one thing. Okay? I'm still not a great fan of that. And quite frankly, I'm mostly a fan of it on a local basis. But if you are going to allow for petitions of various kinds to be generated, and you have no way to verify or validate that the people who are entering data on those petitions are people who should be able to do so for the question that's being posed, I hate to say this, but why would I listen to it? Why would I pay it any attention at all? I've never once, I think maybe once ended up, maybe a couple times even, ended up on change.org, and I thought, why am I here? And I left. There's literally nothing there for me, right? And as far as I'm concerned, anything that's thrown together with the apparent reckless abandon that I attribute to those who made change.org, anything that's that way, I don't have any time for at all. And the fact is, like I say, oh, you got 100,000 signatures on a federal mandate of some sort. Let me just help you. Like I say, 3,300,000 people is 1% of the U.S. population. For something to make any sense on a federal level, if it isn't at least 30 million, you're really pushing it. If it isn't really more like, 60 or 80 million, I think personally, it's barely worth looking at all. Okay? When you start talking about things that are local, and quite frankly again, national, how do you even validate it? How is that being validated? Now, I admit I've not looked at change.org. Maybe somebody can set me straight on that. Maybe they are checking to see that you're at least a U.S. citizen before they allow you to put something on change.org. Maybe they are. I'd be kind of surprised to hear it. I don't have any time. When I see a poll on Twitter, I take everything I see. Excuse me, I did mention a social media platform. But on any of the social media platforms, quite frankly, I take everything I see with a grain of salt. And if you don't, you're not a very clever individual. To begin with, your sample size, unless you're dealing with somebody who has a ton of users, is going to be quite small. But even if the person happens to have a ton of users, if, say, for example, Donald Trump has a bunch of followers on some social media platform, what do you suppose the preponderance of those people are going to be? How about conservative? How does that sound to you? That's pretty likely, right? So guess what? The liberals are not getting their, quote, day in court when you do something like a petition or a poll or whatever on one of the social media platforms, because the people who are going to be looking at given individual stuff are going to be very limited. And again, where change.org is concerned, if there's not some way to confirm that somebody is actually a U.S. citizen, and maybe the citizen of a state if it's the state or whatever, and again, if the numbers are as small as it looks to me like they are most of the time, why on earth is anybody bothering to look at that nonsense? And that is what it is to me. It is nonsense to me. All right, I'm out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for coming aboard. Thanks for joining me today on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt. Today is Tuesday, the 15th of June of 2021. Thank you for joining me on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, or wherever else you happen to have joined me from. Remember that Rumble is my preferred platform. You can give me a positive Rumble there or a negative one, depending on how you feel about what I presented. You can give me a like or a dislike, a thumbs up or a thumbs down on YouTube if you want to do that. And remember that you can comment on both of those platforms. By all means, thank you for coming along today. Hopefully you're doing well. It's getting toward the middle of the week, but we're not quite there yet. And hopefully we will see you again on tomorrow's Daily Summation. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video is recorded on Tuesday, the 15th of June of 2021. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S. .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.